It's live, guys.
No. Not quite.
Yeah, we're
I can't
live.
find it.
Everyone, we're live. We're live.
Okay, I'm going live. I'm going live with you guys.
Nathan's live. Nathan, you're live.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start it.
I want this one. That's not him. You want the other one.
You want corrections?
Juvenile officer interview. I'm pretty sure I shared it with everybody.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so when he comes in, I want Corey. You want to start off with introductions? Just say hi, welcome. We'll introduce ourselves.
I didn't get shared.
And then Bailey, you want to read the summary for us? Okay. And then Morgan, you want to start off with the first question? Y'all can just go around clockwise or something.
Yeah.
Does that work out? Okay.
Usually it shows us.
Oh, there's an.
Clockwise.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Nathan, you're gonna
Emma.
be the stool.
Gotta go this way.
I'm
I
gonna
am.
be the stool.
Okay.
Like from the costume.
Quick question. Since I'm recording, do I have to ask questions too?
So is it going
I'm going, yeah.
My questions were bad.
You gotta like hold it like that.
I know. I'm just waiting for him to get in here until I actually like get serious with my camera work.
Take your time, use your time.
Got it.
It's come a long way to come see you guys.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna bring him in.
Okay. Oh, we got 2 watchers. Are you watching?
I'm watching.
Oh, yay, Nathan, you're watching. You should like it. I'm helping Miss Bonner out get some ad revenue.
Straight.
I'm waiting for him to come.
Oh, wow.
This is your group today.
This is the group?
This is it.
Yeah.
Hey, okay.
Hello.
All right, everybody, this is Mr. Slaw.
Hello.
Mr.
Hello.
He works at the Juvenile Corrections Facility in Decatur.
Hello.
He'll talk to you about the things we've been reading about with Richard and his experiences.
Okay.
So, Mr. Slaw, with your permission, we're going to record this
Okay.
today so that we can put it on our class webpage and all of our other 8th graders can watch and hear your voice.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for your time today.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
Corey,
you.
I'll let you start, okay?
Alright, my name is Corey Haddon, and I will be one of the people interviewing you.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Corey.
My name's Bailey, and yeah, I'll be interviewing you too.
Okay.
I'm Hayden. I'm gonna be recording the whole thing.
Okay.
I'm Nathan Kempfer. I'm going to be asking you questions as well today.
I'm Landon Nelson. I'm going to be interviewing you today too.
I'm Morgan, and I'll ask you the first question.
Okay.
I'm Cooper, and I'll be interviewing you. I'm Broskies. Yeah, I'll be interviewing you.
Okay,
All right.
so
Yay!
this is like a book summary of what we've been reading so
Mhm.
far. So in class we were reading a book called The 57 Bus, which is based off of a true story that happened in Oakland, California in 2013. There are 2 main characters in the story, Sasha and Richard. Sasha is an agender teen who attends a small private high school. Richard is an African American teen who goes to a public school away from his home-based school. Previous to the event on the public bus, Richard had brushes with the law, and he spent time in a group home while riding the 57 bus. While riding the 57 bus home one evening, Richard, as a prank, lit Sasha's skirt on fire. However, this prank got out of control and caused Sasha to receive 2nd and 3rd degree burns. Richard was arrested the next day at school, interrogated by the police, charged with 2 felonies, and sent to a juvenile corrections facility so that he can await his trial.
Okay, so the first question is, in the text, Richard is arrested the next day after the fire on the bus. When he leaves the police station, the text mentions that he checks into a corrections facility. Richard is given a set of supplies, clothes, shoes, shower supplies, etc. How does this check-in process work with new inmates in your facility?
Great question. Well, number one, whenever they first arrive, basically what's going to happen is all of their regular, like attire, all of that stuff is taken off. All right, it's going to be taken off, and we have to like bring them into a room. They have to take off everything. Okay, all right, and then they are given, like institutional, like clothing. And we give them, the toothbrush, like hygiene, like tools or whatever you want to call that. We get like all of their personal information, you know, their religious, you know, like affiliation. We check them for tattoos, you know, to make sure that they aren't like, you know, associated like with any gangs, you know, that type of thing. I mean, so that's pretty much it. You know, in addition to that, we give them like their pillow, you know, their blankets. They're given like a mattress for the bed because they sleep like on a slab of steel. That's what it is. It's really hard, you know, and very uncomfortable, you know. So basically, we give them their basic necessities, you know, like whenever they first arrive. You know, in addition to that, we give them like a rundown of the facility, you know, like the expectations, you know, how everything runs, you know, that type of thing. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so this one's not part of the text, and Richard's not in the gang, but like what happens if they are in a gang?
Well, if they're in a gang, basically what we'll do is we will put them like in a like a certain set of like clothes, you know, so they can be easily identified. And then they're going to be segregated, you know, from like the regular, you know, like population.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is for their safety, you know. But 9 times out of 10, whenever they're first coming in, you know, they're always going to deny, like, oh yeah, you know, I'm not in a gang, and blah 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 blah, you know. But only to find out later, yeah, you are in a gang, you know, because we see your writings, we see some of the signs, you know, that you're flashing, you know, and that type of thing, you know. So, yeah, so that's what happens. Yeah.
Second question is, in the book, Richard is getting told what the schedule is and where everything is at. What does your guys' schedule look like at a prison and correctional facility?
Ooh, wow, you know what? Great question. The schedule. The schedule, it doesn't really vary from day to day. Monday through Friday is pretty much the same, okay? You know, they can have, we don't call it breakfast, we don't call it lunch, we don't call it dinner, we call it chow, all right, okay? It's kind of weird. But anyway, we call it chow, you know, and they can go to chow at about, I think it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, the majority of the inmates, they don't go to chow, they're sleeping, you know, so we have that. Then they have breakfast at about, no, they have lunch at about 10 o'clock in the morning. It's kind of strange, you know, but anyway, and then after that, you know, they go to dinner beginning at 4. In between there, we run lines like every 20 minutes, all right? You know, so there's like an 8 o'clock line, you know, where everyone goes to get their, you know, like medication, that type of thing. You know, if you're like a diabetic, you know, or if you take medications, you know, for ADHD or some stuff like that, you know, we line them up at like 8 o'clock and they all go and get their meds. Thereafter, at about 8:20, that's whenever school, you know, begins for them. School is mandatory, you know, you have to be in there, you know, and you have to do that, and the expectation is that you have some success. You can't come in there and act like a weasel. You can't do that, okay? All right? You know, but thereafter, we run lines like every 20 minutes, you know, so 8 o'clock, 8:20, 8:40, 9 o'clock, 9, you know, 9:20, 9:40, all throughout the day. Once school ends at 3 o'clock, then, you know, that's whenever they have downtime, you know, but it's still structured. And you won't really see a lot of inmates, you know, just like sitting back doing nothing. You know what I mean? They're all in there doing something, you know, like throughout the day, you know, so that's pretty much the schedule.
Guys, this is the third question.
Mm-hmm.
In the 57 book, Richard is in high school and needs to learn and get knowledge. Do guards play a role in teaching and learning with the kids?
Wow, you know what? That's another great question. You know, but to a degree, yes. You know, we are expected, you know, to hold professional, you know, like interactions, you know, like with the inmates. Okay. But we can't cross the line, you know. So, for example, I can't really give too many life lessons in there. You know, in the event that I do, they have to be short, you know, they have to be sweet, keep it moving, you know, that type of thing. They don't really allow us, you know, to have like a lot of interactions, you know, like with the inmates there. You know, in fact, in my pocket here, see, in this pocket here, yeah, in this pocket we have a card, and it reminds us, you know, that we're not supposed to like socialize, you know, like with the inmates. Yeah, it says it right here, socialization, you know, so they don't really expect for us, you know, to speak with inmates. Prison is a very isolated world. You know, you're kind of like in there alone. And that's like one of the sad things about prison. You know, it's the fact that not only are you segregated from your family and friends, you know, but even like behind the wall, you know, you're kind of like alone. You know, it's kind of sad. You know, so the amount of help, you know, that we can provide for them, you know, coming from us as officers is kind of limited.
The next question. Richard writes a letter to Sasha, the person who he set on fire, that apologizes for what he did. Is this a practice that you see at your job? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do kids in juvenile detention take steps to make things right?
Absolutely. You know, we have a program called, it's kind of like restorative justice, you know, like type thing, where if they commit like a crime against, you know, just like some random person, basically what we'll try to do is we'll try to set it up so that the person who committed the crime, you know, and the victim of the crime are brought together, you know, and they try to mend, you know, that situation, you know. So in addition to the two of them being there, you know, many times you'll have someone from the community there, as well as the judge, you know, which presided over the case. They all will sit there in a forum, you know, and try to discuss like what happened, you know, why the offender, you know, did what it was that they did, and then the victim, you know, will talk about how the crime committed against them, you know, impacted their lives, you know. So, so yes, we do that.
If you have to move juveniles into their cells, how do you feel whenever you have to do that?
You know what? I'm just gonna say this one time. You know, once and for all. All of these questions are good, so I'm not gonna keep saying, "Oh yeah, good question, good question." You know, I mean, so anyway, another great question. All right, so when we move offenders, how do I feel about it? When you first begin, you know, it's kind of like jarring. You know, you're kind of like, whoa, you know, like I'm moving a kid who is like an inmate, you know, a prisoner, you know, and it kind of shakes you up a little bit, you know, because in my mind I'm not thinking like, you know what, she needs to go to prison. I'm not thinking that in my mind. You know what I'm saying? She's a kid. You know, I hate to say it. You know, you're growing up. All right. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, you know what, we shouldn't treat like, you know, our young people that way. But the more you do it, it's just like with anything else. The more you do it, you become acclimated with it. You know, you become accustomed to it. You know, so when you first do it, you know, it's kind of like, wow, you know what? Wow, I'm really like, you know, like housing, you know, juvenile inmates. You know, but the more you do it, I mean, it's just kind of like anything else, you know. And in a lot of ways, that's not good. Yeah, in a lot of ways, that's not good. You know, because I think that to a degree, you know, we should always remember, like, wow, you know what, we're working with kids, you know, and kids, they need, you know, like opportunities, you know. So that's how I feel about that.
What do you do if the inmates don't listen or respect you?
I don't really have that problem. Okay, I don't really have that problem. And it's not because I'm, you know, like around there, you know, like with an iron fist. It's not that, you know, it's not, you know, beating up kids, you know, and that type of thing. It's not that. But really, it's the rapport, you know, that you build, you know, like with the kids, you know, that causes you to get that respect. And in there, whenever you respect them first, you know, they usually give it back, you know. So I don't really have too much of that, you know, but some of the procedures that we have are, you can be room restricted, you know, which means that you're going to be removed from your regular, you know, like attire, you know, prison attire, and you're going to be given like a colored shirt, okay? Whenever you're given this colored shirt, you're expected to stay in a room like all day, okay? All right? You can move around for like dinner, you know, you can move around for breakfast and lunch. You can move around to go, you know, to the healthcare unit and get your medicines, you know, that type of thing. But for the most part, you're kind of like in a room like all day long. All right, okay. Thereafter, we have what is called segregation. All right, I don't know if you all are like familiar with segregation, but segregation is kind of like now you've gone from the room, where you have minimal, like movement to like no movement at all, and now you aren't. Let me backtrack. Whenever you're like on a room restriction, I mean you're still kind of like in the mix with everyone. Okay, all right, you're still like on the same housing unit as the other inmates. The only thing is you don't move when they move. All right, number one. Number two, you aren't out of your room as much as they are like out of their room. Okay, so whenever we upgrade that, segregation means that now you are isolated from everyone. Now you're just kind of like in a hole. And you're down there like all by yourself. Okay, all right. And the third thing after that is if you don't get the message, like after being room restricted and after like going through segregation, now we move you to like a different facility. Now you're going over to a bigger house. And a lot of the inmates are really trying to avoid that. So we don't really have too much of that. We don't have like too many problems where the inmates are kind of like rebellious. So.
And another question that I have: how
Yeah.
big is that like solitary confinement room?
Are you talking about in terms of the room itself, or are you talking about how many? Okay,
Like the
the room itself is kind of like it's large enough for one bed, for one toilet. That's about it. It's much smaller than this.
Wow.
Yeah, much smaller than this. Let me see here. Do you all have like any restrooms here that only have like one, like one toilet in there or whatnot?
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay. Okay, two. Okay, so just imagine that along with a bed, and then maybe about, gosh, maybe a few feet to like walk around. I mean, it's kind of like a little box,
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun.
Can they like get anything to do other than that? Like paper, pencil?
This stuff right here, computers, you can forget about it. You can forget about that. I think that they are. I think that they are allowed to have 2 books in their room. Let me see here. Can they write? I don't think that they can write. Because we consider like pens to be contraband. Contraband. Are you familiar with contraband?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We consider pens to be contraband. I mean, so the items that they get, are like very minimal. So you might get 2 books, but other than that, nah. It's just you, the wall, the toilet, the bed, and 2 books. That's your entertainment. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad.
So another question is, what is your daily routine in the prison or correctional facility?
The daily routine.
Like your daily routine.
My daily routine, I run lines. I pretty much run lines like every day. Then I interact, with the inmates. I am like their go-to for everything. If they need like a request slip, because they want to speak to someone, I'm the one who administers that. Like whenever they clean like their units or their wings. Let's see here. What do we do? I have to like issue, kind of like got distracted there. But anyway, we issue like, like the bleach and that type of thing because they can't like keep bleach, that type of thing. So also administer, like all of the tools, like the brooms, that type of thing. All of that stuff has to be checked out. As I indicated earlier, like every 20 minutes, we run lines. That's going to be me. They can't get out of the door unless I let them out of the door, So that's pretty much what I'm doing day by day. In addition to that, I am there, to assist them, like with any other problem that they may have. Going back to your question in regard to how much we're allowed to help them. Many times, if they're struggling with something, you know, they may have a question, you know, and, you know, I may try to, you know, help them along with that process as well. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, so before I move on
Yeah.
to the next question, what if someone is disabled, not like disabled, but like they're on crutches, like me right now, but, so would they be, how would that work out, I guess?
They're gonna be treated like a regular inmate. You know, I mean, there's no, you know, there's nothing really different, you know, that we do. You know, you know, they are still required to follow like all of the rules. They still move like on all of the lines, you know, that type of thing. You know, I think that they may get like some preferential, you know, like treatment, in terms of like their line positioning. You know, we probably wouldn't put them like at the back of the line. We wouldn't, you know, tell them things like, or say things like, you know, well, you need to hurry up, you know, that type of thing. It's, you know, it's not like that. But, you know, but no, they're treated like a regular inmate. You know, there's no distinction there, you know, just because, you know, wheelchair, you know, or that type of thing. Basically, they are treated like they broke the law, you know, so, yeah.
Okay, so the fourth question is, how do you handle fights that go on between 2 or more inmates?
That's it. Say it. Well, interesting to note. We don't have a lot of fights, you know, like at our facility. There's been like an uptick, you know, in like some of the fights, you know, that we've had since June. But prior to that, we didn't have a lot of fights. But when we do have fights, the first thing that we do is we issue a command. You need to stop. All right, okay? And you will be amazed about how much power this thing has. You know, you could be. Are you the smallest guy in here? Okay.
Yeah.
You can be the smallest guy. You can be the smallest guy wearing this badge, and whenever you walk into the room, oh no. They know. You know what? We need to do what's right. So if this young man, if he's wearing this badge, you know, and if he goes in there, and if there's like 2 people in there fighting, 2 inmates, and if he says, hey, you know what? You guys need to stop right now. Typically, they're going to stop. Okay. If they don't, issue a command. You know what? And the command is whenever you take it to the next level. You know, this is a command. You know, I order you to stop fighting. All right. If they don't stop, then we carry pepper spray. Has anyone ever been exposed to pepper spray? Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
It's not fun.
I have.
Okay.
And
Really? Oh God, it's not fun. It's not fun at all. You can't see. It's almost like someone takes like sand, throws it into your eyes, and that sand is on fire. You know, so you can't open your eyes. And whenever you try to open your eyes, that makes it worse. In addition to that, the pepper spray opens up your mucous membrane, and your mucous membrane. Not trying to gross you guys. I'm not trying to do that. All right, but everything that's in your nose is coming out. Everything in your nose is coming out, and there's nothing that you can do about it. All right. And the third thing that it does, it kind of like it messes with your breathing. Okay. All right. Your breathing is now being. Your breathing is being messed with. I'll just put it like that. You know. So they aren't really trying to deal with the pepper spray. In the event, you know, that those things don't work, that's whenever we call for backup. You know, we call for backup, you know, and there are a lot of us in there, you know, and we have like a tactical team, and the tactical team is comprised of some really big guys, you know, they carry like, you know, really big sticks, and they wear helmets, you know, that type of thing. They come in and they do their work. You know, so in the event that there's a fight, you know, those are like the procedures that, you know, that we carry out. But I haven't seen any of that, you know, since I've been there. So.
How long have you been there?
I've been there. I've been at this facility since about April. You know, but I've been doing this work for a long time. You know, so I don't know if you all have ever seen like the lockup shows. You know, like on television. You know, but that stuff is real. You know, it's real, and It goes down, it goes down like at the juvenile facilities, at the adult facilities, at the minimum securities, at the max securities. You have like some really, I hate to say this, but you have, I'm not gonna say that you have bad people, but you have people, that have bad intentions, you know what I'm saying? So it's out there, yep. But we're trained to deal with that.
For the fifth question, I'm gonna kind of like mess it up. It's do you sleep in the prison or correctional facility? But I'm gonna add like how do you or like how you experience like what it's like being in there?
Have I slept in there?
Like have you like understand like how they are, how you slept, how they were, been where they were?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never slept in our current facility, but whenever you go to the training academy, you have to live like an inmate, and that's 6 weeks, like worth of like training. So in essence, what is happening and what is taking place is you're sleeping like on the steel beds, the very uncomfortable pillows. You get the prison food, and let me tell you something about the prison food, my man. All right, it is not McDonald's. Okay? The prison food is terrible. The worst food that I've ever had, like in my entire life. I lost 11 pounds, from being in the academy. And that was not intentional. I was not trying to lose 11 pounds, because I didn't really need to lose 11 pounds. So yeah, I've experienced that. In addition to that, whenever you're at the training academy, they run lines and they run the schedule, just like the prison, the prison schedule, So whenever we were at the academy, we got a chance to taste and experience, like some of the things that the inmates go through. So.
Do you ever interrogate people of coming clean to what they did or didn't do?
Repeat that question.
Interrogate.
Oh, interrogate?
Yeah.
Do we ever interrogate we are allowed to. We are allowed to, because we believe that process has already taken place, prior to them arriving at our facility. Whenever they go through the court system is kind of like where they go to answer questions, they receive a sentence, that type of thing. By the time they come to our place, the court has already made the decision, you know what, you're guilty. So there's no point in us, interrogating, like the inmates there. So, and what you'll find out is that the majority of the inmates who are there are innocent. Yeah, they didn't do it, type stuff, so, yeah.
Before I read the last question, you were talking earlier about how when you realize that they're just kids. Is there anything in the juvenile system that you would like change?
Gosh, I could go all day on this one. But I tell you what, I think the number one thing that I would change would be how we house juveniles for petty crimes. If you're committing petty crimes like running away, I hate to say this, but if you're skipping school, that's important, all right? That is important. Don't skip school. I'm not trying to encourage you all to skip school, all right? But the petty crimes, we don't really need to house kids. We don't need to do that. We do have kids who are violent, offenders. Those who are, like committing murders, rapists.
Oh my.
Let's see here, what else? Just anything
Armed
that's kind of
robbery?
like, like a major crime. Those are the ones that we want to be careful about. Those are the ones that don't necessarily need to be out there on the streets, but in terms of the petty crimes, I think that we could do something better, for them, to correct those behaviors, but besides housing.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And then in your facility, do you have activities or meetings for the juveniles so they can talk to a therapist or someone that can help them with the crime that they committed and how they can learn from their mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. We have those services available, for the juveniles. To me, I would love to see more of that. because I think that there's a difference between prison and corrections, all right? Prison is where, you know, you're being segregated, you know, you're kind of like in a house, no one is talking to you, you know, and that type of thing. That's prison, where you're, you know, where you go to do hard time, that type of thing. Corrections is where, and this says corrections, right? Corrections is where, or when, you should be able, and you should be allowed to speak with offenders, you know, to correct some of those behaviors, you know, that landed them there. Because see, if you don't reach out to them, and if you aren't working on some of those behaviors, just housing someone, you know, for like 6 months or, you know, 3 years or whatever, just housing someone is not really going to change behavior. Behavior changes, you know, like whenever you offer like alternatives, you know, to the behaviors, you know, that landed them there, you know. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Here's just a question. You're talking about you can't interact. What if like an inmate like looks up to you as like a person just for like respect and like what are you supposed to do?
Sure, absolutely. There comes a point in time, you know, where your humanity, you know, has to like override certain things, you know. So, as a human being, it's really hard for me to ignore another human being who's reaching out, you know, like to me for help. Now, albeit, you know, I'm very professional about the help that, you know, that I extend. It's not one of those cases where, you know, some kid is coming, you know, is crying to me, hey, you know, can I get out of here, Slaw? And I'm like, yeah, you know, here are the keys, you know, go ahead and go. It's not that, you know, but no, anytime your humanity is kind of like in play, I typically go with that, you know. So, for example, you get the phone call, you know, that your best friend, you get the phone call, you know, that that your sentence, you know, has been extended. Okay, you thought that you were going to get out before Christmas, but no, you aren't going to get out until April. All right, and you're feeling kind of bad about that. I'm going to listen, you know, to you complain about that. I'm going to listen to your feelings about that type of thing. You know what I'm saying? And I may even offer like some encouragement, you know. But you have some officers, you know, who are kind of like deal with it, you know, and they will, you know, push you aside. But I'm not really that type of person. So, yeah.
Like I don't think like if someone like finds out like you like go do something you're not supposed to, like what would be your punishment?
My consequence?
Yeah.
It depends. It depends on the situation. In the scenario that I just gave to you, if my superiors, you know, if they heard about that, yeah, you know, they aren't really gonna say too much about that, you know. But if we're just like me and this guy, you know, we're sitting back at the table, you know, we're talking about Justice League, you know, and we're just talking about, you know, like, yeah, man, you know, I think Superman is better than Flash, and you know, we go all day talking about that, you know. They frown on that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so it varies, you know. If it's a situation like the one that I extended to you, that's one thing. But if it's he and I, you know, we're just sitting around at the table, we're talking about Justice League and Marvel Comics and that type of thing, nah, they don't like that.
I have a question. Do you let the inmates go outside for anything?
Absolutely. I mean, they go out every day. The only times that they can't really go out, they can't go out at night, obviously. Whenever the weather's bad, they can't go out, can't go outside then. But for the most part, they get a chance to go out for, they have yard in the morning, that's what we call it. And they go out for yard whenever it's not raining, all right? If it's raining or snowing, you know, they can't go out. And the reason why is because we have like white floors, you know, and we keep the floors like really like polished, like my head, you know, that wasn't fun. But anyway, so they go out for that. After dinner or chow, they can go outside until it begins to get dark, you know. So right at what do you call that? Like right before, is it dusk? Yeah, right at dusk. That's whenever we close everything down. So, yeah.
Do they have like basketball or something at that time? Or like weightlifting?
Yeah, they have basketball, they have softball, well, they have a softball diamond, volleyball, and they play. Yeah, they play, have a track, you know, so, it's all, you know, it's all fenced in. And we have barbed wire, you know, like at the top, you know, so, you know, so, you know, so we don't have like anyone trying to escape. Yeah, yep, that's what we have.
Have you like I guess when you sit out there and like observe, have you like seen anyone who's like a really good talent at something?
Absolutely. Oh gosh, you know what? You see, like, I've seen like some of the best athletes. I've seen some of the best artists. I've seen some of the best like philosophers and thinkers. I've seen some of the most creative people, you know, like incarcerated. Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, because I sit back and I think like, wow, how in the world did this guy or did this woman like wind up like this, you know, or this young person, you know, like wind up like in this place, you know. So I've seen it all. Yeah, I've seen a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that, you know, in a second.
I'm kind of curious. Sorry, Corey, but are there like whenever they go outside, do you see like the cliques of people? Like, is it visible like who goes with who and stuff along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have cliques, you know, but the cliques that we have, they aren't really on too much garbage, man, because they know about that pepper spray. You know what I mean? So you see it, you know, you see it, but we don't really have like too many problems with that, you know, so, yeah.
What motivated you to become a corrections officer?
Damn, you know what, I wake up every morning, you know, and I ask myself that same question, like, why in the world am I doing this? Whenever I was a kid, I mean, I kind of liked, you know, like, the whole officer thing, you know, I kind of like that. So whenever I went to school, my major was sociology, anthropology. It's kind of like history and the study of like people and the groups of people, that type of thing. But my minor was criminal justice, you know. So I've always had this thing, you know, for like crime, you know, but I'm not a criminal, you know. So yeah, I think that it was just like a cheetah, you know. It's kind of like born with speed. I think that I was just born, you know, to work, you know, like in this area, you know. So yeah, that's what it was. I think it was just natural.
Okay.
Yep.
If you could have chosen any other place to work besides the correctional office that you're working at now, where would you go?
In the same field or?
Yeah, in the same field.
Like a different facility?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Maybe Pontiac or maybe even Stateville. You know, those are kind of like they're really rough. You know, like prisons. You know, like in the state of Illinois. Wouldn't mind working there. That's where you're going to see like everything. You know, anything that can be considered to be bad, you're gonna see it like at those facilities, you know. So I've seen some bad things, you know. I've seen some really bad things, you know. Yeah. So if I were to like go to any other facility, it would probably be like one of those two places just for a day. Yeah, just for a day, because I don't want to do it for a long time.
How do you feel like when you see like the news articles like bashing on like your job or like cops or something in general?
Well, I don't really pay too much attention to it. So, I mean, because everyone has an opinion. You know, I mean, it's just like LeBron James. LeBron James can be a great basketball player, but someone out there is going to hate on LeBron. All right? Steph Curry can be a great basketball player, and we know he's great. someone's going to hate on Steph Curry. Tom Brady can be a great quarterback. Someone is going to hate on Brady. Jordan was a great basketball player. Bryce Harper is a great baseball player. Someone is going to hate on those guys, regardless of what it is that they do. Let me see here. You have like so many phenomenal, like female athletes out there too. Serena Williams is a great tennis star, all right, but someone's going to hate on her, as well. So whenever it comes to me and my job and this badge, you're going to always have a cynic. You're going to always have a critic. You're going to always have someone, who has something to say. So in light of that, whenever I hear the stories and whenever I see the videos, of like, cops gone bad, that type of thing, I'm not really surprised by that. Because see, the one thing that I keep in mind is that positions are like comprised of people, and people have problems. I don't care who you are. You have crazy people like in every profession. But just because you have crazy people in all professions doesn't mean that the profession itself is bad. Just because you have one bad teacher doesn't mean that all teachers are bad. Okay. And just because you have like a few dummy officers out there, who are doing dummy things, doesn't mean that all officers are dummies, So it doesn't really bother me all that much. It happens. I mean, it happens. I've seen some things, myself, that are kind of like head scratchers. Like, why in the world did she just do that? Or why did he just say that? So it happens. It happens, so. And I don't think that this is a new phenomenon. Yeah, it's not, this is not something that that is new to our experience, like as human beings. I mean, this is something that if you go back, I mean, you guys are here at school. I don't know if you know anything about the ancient, just like the Romans, the Greeks, all right? The Roman Colosseum, all right? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
All right, some of the things that they were doing, like back then,
Yeah.
same as today, what I mean? So anytime you have like human beings, like in power or in play or doing anything, you're bound to see some things, that are kind of like unethical, So.
Do you have like, when you're working, do you have any like problems with like racial things like between inmates?
Surprisingly, we don't have a lot of racial stuff, I mean, which is kind of cool. I'm so glad to see that. The crazy thing is that the majority of them are like together, and the people who they don't like are me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so, and in each housing unit, you'll have like maybe, okay, like a housing unit might hold 4 or 8. You may have like two whites, 2 blacks. You might have 2 blacks, 2 whites, maybe 1 Latino, maybe 1 Indian person, so they do a really good job of making sure that everything is multicultural, so, yep.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you for coming out and talking to us.
Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you all. You all were a good group. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
questions, yeah.
A lot of fun interviewing you.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
cool.
Really
Thank you.
interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's cool.
Thank you.
So has the camera stopped rolling?